10, 9, ignition sequence start. All engines are running.
Roger, the clock is operating. We're underway.
One small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
We tried to do a giant leap, but we tripped and fell, so it's a small step into Episode 9 of Kerbalcast, Dawn of the Planet of Kerbals.
Let the games begin.
I am your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, and with us our CMP, Command Module Pilot
Nostromo.
Coming up in today's program, we'll have part 2 of our interview with Majir.
We have our progress update and beginner's minute.
Also, our crew report, that's where we read your letters, including a listener request for some tips on building space planes.
The latest news in the mission briefing.
And another episode of
As the Kerbin Turns. We also do our But I Digress segment where we talk about the original Planet of the Apes.
The original. As always, we would like to remind you that you can get in touch with us at kerbalpodcast@gmail.com.
You can also reach us on Twitter at Kerbalcast.
Although I guess after this week I should issue a warning. If you do follow us on Twitter, you might end up getting some really dumb pictures that I drew.
Hey, I didn't think they were that bad. I kind of liked them.
I have no idea what I was doing.
Yeah,
honestly, I'm just and for those of you who didn't see, I was doodling at work. I was bored, and for some reason, I started drawing Kerbals, but I was drawing Kerbals as characters from the Dark Knight movies. So there was Kerbal Bane, and there was Kerbal Batman. And I took pictures of them and I tweeted them. And when I was sending out the one about Bane, it occurred to me right then that somebody who had no idea what I was doing.
That you might be nuts?
Well, it's so random. It's like, why in God's name would I go Kerbal Batman?
Well, I mean, we've only covered Dark Knight Rises. I mean, I still need to see a Scarecrow and a Joker.
Yeah, I guess. But when I sent out the tweet, I actually wrote on the little tag, I said, I have no idea why I thought of this. Because honestly, I mean, I was at work, I was drawing, and I was like doing Bane, and I was doing the voice. I was like, it doesn't matter who we are. What matters is our plan. Yeah. And then, okay, so now I'm drawing Batman. This city just showed you it's full of people ready to believe. And then for some reason, I just, this madness which has infected my brain, I'm going to share it.
Oh, yeah.
I'm going to release it into the wild.
That's what you do with that.
Yeah.
That's definitely what you do.
And people were like retweeting, and I'm sure it was, like, hey, look at this, retweet. So anyway, if you subscribe to us on Twitter, just once in a while, you're going to get little pieces of my madness. So just a warning.
See, I mean, some guy said that he was gonna make a bat pod, like a bat pod rover.
Yeah, he's a tumbler.
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's a nice rover.
It's not a rover. It's not a rover. Does it come in black? Well, do you want to get back on track?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Yeah, let's talk Kerbal.
Hey.
There's a surprise. In our last episode, we had part 1 of an interview with Majir. And Majir is a programmer. And we had been talking in the previous podcasts about something called Mod Statistics.
It's a program that records your playtime and a couple other small pieces of information and sends them back to his own server.
Mod Statistics is included in Kethane, the Kethane mod. There is another mod that Majir does called the Kerbal Attachment System. Mod Statistics is currently not part of that. I asked him if it would be added soon.
Kerbal Attachment System will be seeing some updates soon for 0.24. The 0.24 is including a whole new cost mechanic, and Kerbal Attachment System does a whole lot with parts and including them in containers, so there's going to be a lot of work on that. It probably will include mod statistics because it has a large user base, and it would increase coverage a lot. Currently it is in Kethane, and Kethane users have that was in a minor update. It was in an off-cycle update, so far there's been about 8,500 users who have reported in with that, and in the Kethane thread you can see right below the download link there is mention of mod statistics.
our next question was, what do you think about people's concerns with mod statistics?
I think there was a bit of paranoia in, there's something about credit card stealing, and I don't even know what that was all about. There's nothing about stealing credit cards in mod statistics. There's nothing to be concerned about there. Some people have audited the mod statistics code and let me know, hey, it looks like you've got this small bug here, but otherwise everything looks good. So I think there are a lot of good eyes on this, and I wouldn't worry about this kind of running out of control or sneaking in or being unnoticed. I think this is getting a lot of good attention from people. I'm certainly trying to get people to look into it. So I would encourage people, if they think that there's something wrong with it, to really just be upfront and contact me, and I'll be happy to address their concerns.
Now that you've had a chance to hear the whole thing, we're curious to hear from you again. Has your opinion changed at all now that you know everything? Now that you've heard his side of the story, has your opinion changed about mod statistics?
Yeah, you can just go ahead and write us at kerbalpodcast@gmail.com, or you can tweet us at Kerbalcast.
And one thing I do want to say, when you do write to us, kerbalpodcast@gmail.com, be sure and put in there what name you want us to use when we read your letter.
Yeah, sometimes people use their Gmail or something, and it'll give us their actual name and their username.
Yeah.
So we just want to know which one you want to be referred to as.
In case you're like in witness protection or something.
Yeah, so at the end of the email.
We'd hate to be the one that blows your cover.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's move on. Let's go ahead and do our progress report now. This is where we kind of talk about where we are in the game. As we say every time, I've been doing this for about a year. I looked on Steam.
Yeah.
I'm at 570 hours.
Wow.
Woohoo!
We're getting up there.
Woohoo! Yeah. That's what I did instead of having a life.
Yeah.
And you've been playing now for about 2 months.
2 months.
Do you know your hour total?
Not off the top of my head.
Okay.
No.
Well, mine's bigger, that's for sure.
It's turned out to be like 2 hours, and I've just been lying this entire time.
You've been lying.
It's like, oh yeah, and then I launched it, and I went to the green planet.
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the ticket. No, it's like you got your cat playing it.
Yeah. I just log on and leave it so Steam racks up the hours.
The way we usually do the progress report is we usually start with you. So, do you have a progress update story to tell us?
Yes. Okay. So my recent venture has been just building giant rockets and launching them all over space. And I've been doing flybys over the Mun, and like getting a little bit of science here and there. So if I want to make a successful trip to the Mun, I really want to get some refueling done. I don't have docking ports, because after you go through all your science tree, you have to eventually get them at like 160 science. Mm-hmm. And I spent all my science getting big, massive rockets because that was cool. Well, I was at around 100 science, and I needed to just collect some. So I did a few like little, nickel and dime missions to get some, little science around Kerbin that I may have forgotten or haven't gotten. And I was 60 away. So I was like, you know what? I want to see if I can make it there without it. I remember you telling me a hilarious story about how somebody landed on the bell of the engine. And I was like, you know what? I'm incompetent enough to try that. And so I strap a massive rocket together and launch it. And it turns out I had way more rocket than I needed, which was good. So I ended up leaving some of it behind. If I would have had docking, I could have gone back up and reattached to it. But I had this lander.
You actually left some fuel in orbit?
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that.
Yeah, it feels so wasteful.
I mean, I do, and I know it's the dumbest thing. But if you detach and there's still fuel left in the stage that you're detaching from, I mean, you feel like you're just throwing money out the window.
So landing gear propped out, rockets ready to go, and I see my speed, and I'm like, I know that needs to be very low. And so I would start thrusting to counter it, and then all of a sudden I would start increasing in speed, and then I'd look up, and I was gaining altitude. I was like, oh, okay, let off. Okay, now a little bit, now let off, and a little bit, and let off. And then the whole thing crashed, and the rockets that were on the bottom of it blew up, but the half of the science pod construct that I made was still there, including the command pod. So Bill Kerman.
So technically, you were on the moon.
I landed. I made it to the Mun, guys. Go me. And so Bill.
Not that you could recover from it.
No. But I got my crew report. and sent that off, like transmitted. I was only transmitting what I could get 100% of because I don't want to waste science later on.
Did you transmit his last will and testament?
So I did,
since he was stranded.
Yeah, I did it. I did his crew report, and then I went out and did my EVA, and then my soil sample, and then I put a flag saying, curse you, Nos.
Bill was here.
Yeah, Bill was here.
WUZ.
And I was like, well, he's not coming back. So, I had the Mun Midlands. And I was like, I'm going to go for the Highlands. So remember earlier, like in an episode or two ago, when I said the fastest way to travel is to just tumble around in your little command pod. I didn't compensate for gravity, and that thing went soaring in the air. Like, I got some speed going, and it took off.
And you had no engines to slow you down?
No, it was just going. And so that thing, it crashed into the ground. So, man, Bill went out. He went out having fun. That thing was a theme park ride, and he rode it till the very end.
Okay, I dispute that.
What?
I don't think Bill went out having fun. I'm sure Bill was, was saying very family unfriendly things.
Hey, in space, no one can hear you say that stuff. So
yeah, that's true. That's true.
They couldn't hear screams. They couldn't hear it. So as far as I'm concerned,
curse you, Nos.
And I transmitted quite a bit of science and got my docking ports. And so I've been working on Rendezvous again, so I could actually put the docking ports to use.
You crashed on the Mun.
I crashed on the Mun. I ended up on something different than Kerbin, which that was fun in and of itself. And
question: did you, when you were landing, were you coming straight down or were you coming down at an angle?
I was coming down at an angle, and I think that's what got me. Is like I tried to make it to where is it like a direct fall down, but I didn't know how much that mattered until I really encountered what it was like trying to land on something without an atmosphere or without any sort of way to build up drag or anything.
Right.
So I was like, well, I could pretty much tell this isn't going to end well. So I tried to counter it, but I just had small thrusters, so it didn't really do it.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. So you I'm going to do air quotes. You landed on the Mun.
Yep. With absolute grace.
There you go.
And I got some science out of it, and I got some nice debris that's just going to be stuck there forever.
The Bill Kerbin Memorial Debris Pile.
He paid the price in order to bring me docking ports to see.
So it was worth it.
Yeah, he's saving Kerbal kind by me not constantly just crashing things into planets and transmitting off to get more science.
I still don't think he was having a good time. I think you rationalized that. So anything else?
That would be it for my progress report.
Okay. Well, I did two things this week. I'm still shooting for Eve.
Okay.
And I did something similar to what you did. Eve, for those of you who have not tried to land on Eve, and those of you who have, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Landing on Eve is difficult because the gravity is so heavy. And the atmosphere is so thick. I mean, you have to fire parachutes and you have to do a full thrust burn just to bring it down, just to bring your speed down enough to land. And also, Eve, unlike the Mun, has a lot of, I guess I'll call them seas. Purple,
okay.
The purple waves of seas,
like bodies of water.
Yeah, and you know the one side of Eve, there's a fairly good-sized continent, and if you can come down on that, you've got a lot of room to drift. So you have a fairly good-sized target to hit.
Yeah.
If you get like on the other side of the globe, what you're shooting at there is little islands.
Oh.
And there you don't have any room for error.
Yeah.
So, I mean, some of my landings on Eve were basically I'd go right into the ocean. And then, you know, of course, when that happens, everything would just explode.
Uh-huh.
But I finally did manage to land. I did, you know, the graceful landing, just kind of like yours.
Oh, okay.
I have 2 Kerbals currently stranded on Eve.
Well, at least they have company.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, and then another thing I discovered too, and I'm gonna have to do some redesigning here, but I put ladders along the side of the lander.
the actual little ladders or the extendable
the
ones?
extendo landers.
Yeah, I haven't messed with those, but
I did that, obviously so they could go down and take surface samples and come back up. Well, because the gravity is so heavy there, the jetpacks aren't strong enough to actually lift them up. And I discovered that I placed the extendo ladders just low enough at the rim of the lander to where when they get to the top of it, instead of going up and over, they fall backwards.
Oh.
So when I say I have 2 Kerbals stranded on Eve, I mean I literally have 2 Kerbals standing on Eve.
Like they can't get back inside.
They can't even get back in their craft. And I'm doing one of those things where I put my fingers in my ears and I go la 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 la, because I have convinced myself that their suits have infinite air.
Yeah. And they're happy.
And they're happy, just like Bill was when
Bill.
you landed him.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, I mean I literally have 2 Kerbals standing on Eve next to the wreck of their spacecraft, and I am in the process right now of putting together a rescue mission.
I was about to ask if there were any little parts that they could like move around and climb on top of in order to get there.
We could do like a sci-fi version of Flight of the Phoenix.
Yeah, or just keep stacking stuff up.
Yeah, just keep, and then at the end, one of them goes, "Yeah, I've only built toy spaceships," and then they get like into a big fight, and then like the desert pirates come after them and stuff. If you haven't seen the movie, that's probably not funny at all. The other thing that I've been doing, like I said, I'm in the process of putting together a rescue mission, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to land on Eve, and I'm going to use a 3-person command pod
with only one person.
So that they can get in there, and I'm going to make sure that the ladders extend high enough to where they can actually get in the stupid pod.
Yeah.
But that's one thing that I'm working on. The other thing I've been doing, and this is more for just fun, but I've been kind of goofing around trying to build the perfect super tanker. Mm-hmm. And because I built one in the past before, and like I was telling you, it's like my lizard brain just somehow or the other just perfectly created this tanker that was the perfect thrust to weight ratio. I mean, the first stage it will get you literally into orbit, into a complete orbit of Kerbin.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
take a note from that book.
Yeah. And what I was trying to do is I was going, okay, I kind of by luck did that one. Now what I want to do is I want to do one where I actually like think it through and actually come up with like the super tanker. Mm-hmm. The super squared tanker.
Yeah.
We'll call it that. And I've been some of my designs have been a little interesting.
Yeah. You're on the cusp of innovation here.
Yeah. Well, I'm on the cusp of something.
Yeah.
Actually, the last one I tried, and it went together in orbit the way I intended. But
that's good.
What it did after that was not what I intended.
That's not good.
Yeah. Imagine, if you will, a very long fuel tank. Okay. And towards the top of it, there are 4 symmetrically placed smaller tanks with engines on them. Okay. So you've basically got one giant tank and then 4 smaller ones arranged around it. Okay.
Yeah.
And the big tank does not feed the smaller tanks. Okay, so basically you've got a giant tank and then you have engines mounted to the side of it that don't draw from that fuel. And there is a docking port on the tail end of it. Then I sent up another tanker that was essentially one giant tank, and it had docking ports on the front and back.
Okay.
All right, are you with me so far?
Yeah.
Okay, so what I did was I sent the first one up, got it into an orbit, sent the second one up, rendezvoused and docked to where it attached to the tail end of the first one.
Okay.
Then I sent another one up and rendezvoused and docked onto the tail end of that. And then I sent another one up and that. So I had basically this long, it was almost like a train.
Yeah.
All these, various train cars. Well, perfect. Except,
you
know how they talk about the tail wagging the dog?
So you had like a giant like snake.
Yeah, I had like it was literally 4 big long tanks all strung together, and the longer the chain got, the more it started maneuvering the front of the train, and it got to the point where I could not control the first, the one in the front that actually had the engines. I couldn't control it. So it was like waving back and forth and going up and down. And it was like a dog chasing its tail.
You were playing like a giant space game of Crack the Whip.
Yeah, basically. And, and it got to the point, where I was just, I'll jettison that one. And then, and that didn't help. So I'll jettison that one. And pretty soon I was just flying the original thing with the 4 engines. I was going, well, that was a waste of time.
Well,
but it was fun.
Yeah.
It was fun.
You transfer all the... Well, actually, if that one's not connected, it would still have all the fuel in it.
Yeah.
So it's...
Well, that was the other thing, too. Having that long tail.
Yeah.
I suspect that... Not that there's drag at the altitude I was at, or that much drag, but I think the fact that there was that long tail,
like reactive inertia.
Yeah, I think what happened is I think my fuel efficiency just went.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I mean, part of the reason I was getting rid of the further tanks was I was emptying them just to keep like the engines burning.
Oh, okay.
So anyway, that was a failed attempt.
So I guess even with the mass, if you tried to attach them at the side, if you do like docking ports on the side, it still would have the same issue.
That's kind of where I'm thinking now. I'm thinking I might instead of making it, long. Mm-hmm. I'm thinking I might try and attach them side by side. I don't know. I'm part of the fun of the game, honestly, is just building these wild contraptions and seeing how they work.
Yeah.
Or don't work.
Yeah. See if this will be the one that gets it going.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, I built like a really massive rocket to get it through the mud, and things that are not working out right. And so I built one that was like literally twice the rocket. And it was like, I still had half of it left whenever I made it.
Right.
I was like, then how come I didn't make it whenever it was half the rocket it was?
Right.
Like, if I only needed half of the massive rocket, but if I literally had half of the massive rocket, it won't make it.
Yeah.
So I was like, it's all going to crash anyway.
Okay. Well, you know what? I think this is the perfect time to do the beginner's minute.
Oh, boy.
He has exactly 60 seconds. At the end of that, a buzzer will sound, and he has to stop talking the minute the buzzer sounds.
I'm ready.
You ready?
I'm
okay.
ready.
Now, last time I did a 3, 2, 1 countdown. This time I'm not going to. This time I'm just going to, when the music starts, the 60 seconds are starting as well.
Got it.
Are you sure?
No, but do it.
No, but do it. Okay, let me make sure I got the music ready to go. Okay, here we go. Nos, your beginner's minute question is, tell me how to get into orbit and define the terms apoapsis and periapsis.
Okay, so we're going to assume you already have your rocket built, because I told you how to do that last time. So you have your rocket built, and you launch it, and once you have it going up in the air, you hit M, the M key, and it shows you like its little orbit, which is a little blue line. So whenever the blue line starts to get pretty high up, go ahead and stop your thrust and wait till you're at the very top of that little curve, and there will be an AP, that's the apoapsis. So whenever you get there, you go ahead and turn your rocket to where it's like on the nav ball, it's at like half blue, half orange. And then start turn your throttle up and start thrusting until it starts to make a full circle around Kerbin. And then you'll see an AP, and you'll see your apoapsis and periapsis, which is the top of the curve and the bottom of the curve. And whenever you're leaving your apoapsis and going toward the other one, you're going faster, and when you're going the other way, you're going slower. And
So, did anyone learn anything? Are you okay?
I learned that you can't dance at all.
No, I never said I could. Oh yeah, we should point that out. Another part of Beginner's Minute.
It's him distracting me.
I dance all the way through it.
He's not good at it.
No, I'm not. You are beat red. You've got like tears coming out of you. Was it that bad?
It's hard. It's hard to
concentrate.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't even know what I'd really. I remember the question, but I don't remember what I said.
You know what? I'm going to go get some tassels.
No.
Yeah.
No.
I'm going to see if I can get them going different directions.
No. And that was Beginner's Minute.
Yes.
And
Nos needs, and speaking of which, Nos needs a minute.
Yeah, I need a minute.
Okay, have you had a moment? Are you ready to progress?
I am ready for some crew report.
Some crew report. Okay, this is where we read your letters. And you're starting out, right?
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
We got a tip from regular contributor Greg S. I don't know if you guys know about this, but science can be taken out of experiments in pods and stored on Kerbals. You can send it to the lab, allowing you to return to Kerbin with full samples instead of suffering the lab penalty. Greg sent us a link to an in-game picture, and it looks like you can do an EVA. Right-click on Mystery Goo Canister or Science Package or whatever, and select Collect Data, and then you just go back into the ship and go to the lab, and you can store it.
Yeah, I guess you get I think what he's saying is you can get around the penalty.
Yeah, so if
you actually go out and collect the science.
Yeah, so if you collect it, I guess you just put it into the lab.
Yeah, if you have a mobile lab.
Yeah, and then you can reuse the goo canisters, which is nice because that means you won't have to put like a whole stack of goo canisters and Science Juniors on stuff. Like you'll only need one, and you could get the data, store it, and there's your 2 tries at it.
You know, I've said this before. The right click in this game.
Yeah, the right click game is serious and crazy.
Yeah. I mean, you honestly right click on everything.
Yeah,
because God only knows. I mean, there's no telling what. I mean, you know, like you land on the mun and right click on a rock or something, and you know,
and every situation can change what the right click does.
Yeah.
So having your Kerbal next to it now means you can repack a chute. You couldn't repack the chute couldn't repack itself before, but now that you know he's there, you can do that.
I just think it's cool that a year into the game, I'm still learning stuff like this.
Yeah, you're like, oh, there's something I could do, and it's all stuff that makes the game easier. Yeah. You know, it's like you're like, oh, I can do this thing. So the more you know.
Well, what do I always say? The more you do, the more you can do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our next one comes from Kyle K. I found that the mission controller mod works really well with career mode on Kerbal Space Program. It gives you missions, contracts, budgets, and new things to research in career mode. So I guess it's kind of a mod that puts you in 0.24 before 0.24 comes out.
It's like the unofficial 0.24.
Yeah, so it makes me wonder that whenever 0.24 comes out, if it will have anything similar or if...
Well, it makes me wonder if that mod will not be compatible.
Yeah, it could be overrun. You know, and some of the things you're doing may not work out.
Like, get out of here, kid.
Yeah. So, like,
go away, kid. You bother me.
Yeah. All right. What do you got?
Okay. Actually, I have to do a little backstory on this. A couple of podcasts ago, I had mentioned, and this my long-running saga about going to Eve. I had mentioned that I had created a string of refueling stations, one in Kerbin orbit, one in Mun orbit, one in Minmus orbit, and then one in Eve orbit. And ironically, or strangely enough, I've actually gotten letters about that. I've had one letter saying, "Okay, why exactly are you doing that?" And I explained it. Okay, this is what I'm doing, and it's an experiment. I'm probably not going to ever do it again, but I was just kind of, I was trying to make it work. Well, somebody else wrote me in regards to that. And what it is we have people joining the podcast kind of in progress. And so sometimes we'll have people that have just heard an episode that was, like several weeks back. And they're just now writing in to comment because they just heard it.
Yeah.
And that's what's going on here. This is from Jason S. And he says, quote, this is in response to the podcast regarding the Mun and Minmus refueling stations. There is a problem with having a refueling station far outside the gravity well of Kerbin. That being, it will actually take more fuel to go from Mun and or Minmus to another planet than it would be to go from low Kerbin orbit to the same location. Essentially, if you leave from low orbit, you are able to take advantage of the O-berth effect. And he sent a link to the Wikipedia article, which is worth reading if you want to, but he also did a summary of it. He says, quote, "The O-berth effect itself has way too much math to explain or understand unless you're a rocket scientist, but it is essentially using the kinetic energy caused from spinning around a body and converting it into the direction you want to travel. As an example, think of a slingshot. If you're spinning really fast and release, you're able to go faster and farther than if you were spinning slower with a longer string. If you leave from high orbit, you're able to escape Kerbin easier, but you have to burn longer to change your Kerbal orbit to your destination body." So that makes, I mean, does that make sense?
So the closer you are to the gravitational
body,
body,
the more of the kinetic energy of the rotation of Kerbin you borrow.
So it's
the same. It's the same concept behind the gravity assist, where you borrow some of the.
Yeah.
You know, if you intersect a planet in the direction it's rotating, that gives you forward. That adds to your forward momentum.
Gives you a little boost.
If you intersect counter to the way it's rotating, it actually slows you down. It actually borrows energy from you.
So it's better to leave
from low orbit.
From low orbit.
Because you're getting more of a boost from the planet.
Okay.
Okay. Let's see. Okay, so back to the letter. Most fuel-efficient method would be to refuel and restock in low orbit. Burn directly from low orbit to an intersecting orbit with the target body. As soon as you leave the sphere of influence, or SOI, of Kerbal, make an adjustment burn to get as close as you can to the target. Right before you change SOI into your target, do another adjustment burn in order to get a coplanar orbit, and again fix it after you reach the target's SOI. Here he's talking about aerobraking, which is where you skim the surface. Skim the surface. Listen to me. Where you skim the outer edge of a planet's atmosphere.
Okay.
That creates drag and it slows you down.
So
one of the ways that I conserve fuel going into Eve orbit is I will just dip into the atmosphere and at my periapsis.
Okay.
And what happens is without me burning or doing a thing, it pulls down my apoapsis. And, you know, you may have to do it 10 times, but every time it brings your apoapsis down, and you don't burn a bit of fuel. The only thing you have to be careful of, even though it's pulling down your apoapsis considerably, it's also slightly pulling down your periapsis. And if you're not careful on orbit number 10, you may find yourself so far into the atmosphere that you're actually, you know, you got flames and you're deorbiting and you're coming in for a landing.
Okay. And
so you have to make sure that your periapsis stays just right on the edge of that atmosphere. Okay, so but anyway, he's talking about aerobraking. He says crash very gently into any atmosphere that target body may have, and burn retrograde at periapsis to drop your velocity to non-escape speed. If your apoapsis is still too high, crash again into atmosphere to drop speed further. This should overall drastically reduce the amount of fuel that is needed for interplanetary excursions. And then he closes with a line that I think qualifies as this week's understatement. Please note, if you're crashing into the target body rather than the target's atmosphere, you're not doing it gently enough. So yes, if you hit the ground instead of the atmosphere, that's not the way you're supposed to do it.
You need to ease off.
Do you know what? This is something you and I talked about before we got started. Jason, I really appreciate this letter. And I have said since podcast number 1, I consider myself a mid-level player. I don't know everything there is to know about this game. I am still learning. I'm a better player today than I was when I started. Hopefully a year from now, I'll be a better player then. The thing that I really like about that, I am always very honest about if I don't know how to do something or if I don't know something, I will always say it. I don't know.
Yeah.
What I like about that is when you say that, the community mind has the answer. And so by me saying, or by you saying, I don't know, that's something I need to learn.
There's somebody out there that
There's somebody out there who is nice enough to write a nice long letter explaining what it is.
It's like a whole community of people trying to figure out the game together.
And I mean, I like that because it educates me, but then when I share it, it educates everybody else. Because I'm sure there's a lot of people out there that had no idea what the O-birth effect was. By the way, that's O-B-E-R-T-H, O-birth. But Jason, thank you so much for that letter. I am convinced that Kerbal has the nicest community because we have gotten the nicest letters.
Yeah.
I mentioned that I installed Linux on my computer. Boom, I got a letter helping me.
Yeah, a guy helping you out with that.
Yeah. I asked another question, and boom, here came letters.
Yeah,
so,
I've had people recommending me like a lot of different stuff to try, and like saying, "Oh yeah, I had that experience with this," and especially me being like a brand new player, it's like I'm thrown straight into a community that's like helping out.
I just want to say you guys are great. Do you have another letter? Please save me.
We got an email from Tony D, who has just released an ebook called Kerbal Space Program: The Missing Manual. He says it's first volume out of an estimated 4-volume series. You can download the ebook for a suggested donation of $4.99. You can find it at www.mykspcareer.com.
And going back to what I said about how the community helps each other.
The guy made a manual.
Yeah, guy made a manual.
It's
actually, and it's a good man. I've looked at it. It's I mean, there's like, for example, there's a whole section in there on orbital mechanics, complete with, charts and graphs and equations. And I mean, it was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, I was like, this is a lot of work here.
Yeah.
I was like, go Tony.
Well, here's our chance to kind of pay back some of the help that we've gotten from the community. Our last letter comes from Kingsby, K. Kingsby. And he says, quote, "In KSP, I have tried many times and failed to make a space plane that can fly on Kerbin and in space. So I was wondering if on the podcast you could give some pointers for building space planes that can actually fly on Kerbin and in space." Now, I don't know the first thing about building a space plane. I've tried, and let's just say it never got off the runway, much less into space. But there's a friend of ours that does know about this stuff.
Yeah, this comes from DeHood Left-Handed. He is a Twitch TV streamer who was he actually featured us on KSP TV's Twitch channel. Then promptly said never again. Yeah, he's a really nice guy, and he had us on there, and we're just talking about all sorts of stuff, and so we asked him, it's like, hey, could you come on our show? We have a few questions about space planes because neither of us are very experienced in it.
You're going to be bound to aerodynamic design choices a lot more than you will be to space design choices. So the symmetry options and the different ways you can move the camera around, they work a lot better for the spaceplane hangar. Also, since you'll be launching from the runway, it's just simpler that way. You don't have to go and move the craft file from the VAB folder to the SPH folder.
When you're building a space plane, step one, are you basically building a plane step one, and then step two, you're actually adding the space component, or are you doing that all at the same time?
In a way, yes, and that you'll not be able to build a space plane until you've also built a plane. But you do need to make some design choices around the fact that it will be essentially for most of its life cycle in space. You won't need quite so much aerodynamic control. You don't need to be able to do 15 barrel rolls in a row. You can just, as long as it will go up. What you'll mainly want is a good lift on it, since you want to minimize the amount of fuel you're using on the atmospheric ascent. You do have to be careful, though. You don't want too much wing, because once you're in space, that wing is just dead weight. You'll be burning fuel and move it along. You'll also want to move in more intakes than you'll normally expect. Especially, the radial intakes are pretty good for this, because you can just stick them everywhere. Just cover your plane in radial intakes, because you can keep going at a surprisingly high altitude if you have enough intakes, and the max speed of your plane is dependent upon your altitude. So once you get up to 20 kilometers, you can almost reach orbital velocity just at that altitude.
Whenever it comes to building it, do you need more so to watch where your center of mass and lift are than whenever you're building a rocket?
Yes, at least for the aerodynamic part. In the general case for space planes and all planes, you want the center of lift to be slightly behind the center of mass. That way you don't start flipping end over end whenever you try to pull up. One thing, if this is a space plane that you expect to be landing instead of crashing, you should drain the fuel using the right click and set the fuel levels. Just set all the tanks to empty, and that'll show you where your center of mass is when the tanks are dry. So you know how your craft is going to behave on an atmospheric re-entry. If it's completely off at that point and you do end up flipping end over end, you might want to put on some more control surfaces or make the center of lift a compromise between the full and empty states. Just figure out what works there.
Do you have to have two sets of propulsion systems, one that'll work in atmosphere and one that'll work in space?
Well, in one of the recent updates, they did add a hybrid engine. It's the Rapier engine based on the real-life Sabre engine out of Britain. It will work as an atmospheric engine until it runs out of atmosphere, at which point it will automatically switch over to a rocket engine. It's very powerful. You can build a small space plane almost trivially with that. You just build a regular plane using rocket fuel instead of jet fuel and stick one of these on the end of it, and it will probably get to space, might get to orbit even. But once you start building larger, you start to lose some efficiency there, because the atmospheric thrust on the Rapier engine is not that great. You would need more and more of them, and as you add more engines, you're adding more dead weight, and it reaches a point of diminishing returns. At that point, you would need two sets of propulsion. You would need probably the turbojet engines, those longer ones. Those operate at a much higher altitude, and then you would want something to carry you in space, probably an LV-45. They're a bit lighter than the LV-30s, and they're powerful enough to get you out of the atmosphere as fast as possible. You want to spend as little time on the rocket engines in the atmosphere.
Well, let me ask this. Let's say you've got a beginning Kerbaler, somebody who is very, very new to the game, and they want to build a space plane. What is step one?
Step one, I think, would be looking at some of the stock craft, the ones that come with the game. If you open up a sandbox game, go to the spaceplane hangar, and try to load, even if you've never built anything in there, there will be a few stock planes in there. One of which, I believe it's the Ares 4A, or some similar name. It is a fully functional space plane. It's got action groups bound to all the switching features to turn off the atmospheric engines and activate the rocket engines, that sort of thing, and just launch that. Try and figure out how it behaves. If you try to launch it just straight up and go at a steep angle and just go straight to space, you're probably going to have a bad time. The thing that matters most in any spaceplane launch is your ascent profile. You want to spend as much time going horizontal on your atmospheric engines as you can. You're trying to build up all the horizontal motion before going vertical. In a rocket launch, you build up a lot of vertical speed, and then you start going horizontally, right? So when you're building a space plane, you want to do it the opposite way. You want to get as much horizontal speed going, because that's much cheaper on the wings and atmospheric engines. And then as soon as you have gotten to a point where you just can't do that anymore, you activate the rocket engines, pull up as fast as you can to get out of the atmosphere, and burn for space.
I wanted to thank you for helping us out, and I wanted to give you a chance. Do you want to plug your TV show?
Oh, certainly. If you go to twitch.tv/KSPTV, you will find not just me, but a number of other talented KSP streamers, as well as official streams from the Kerbal Space Program developers. If you want to see me for some bizarre reason, you would find that at Wednesdays at 6 p.m. Central Standard Time. If you want to see the cool developer people, that would be on Fridays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And yeah, stop by. It's a really nice space. We've got a lot of very clever people there. And there's me too.
So again, we want to thank Hood for coming in and offering some advice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because we couldn't have.
I just for jokes, I decided to like throw together a space plane,
Oh, did you really?
Yeah, well, I originally had done some of the pre-mades, like you said, and I, just launched around just so I could get my pitch, roll, and yaw adjusted, to see what they were like whenever I was steering rockets. But the other day I made one, and those like separator engines, like those little ones you put on a ton of thrust?
Right.
So I did it in career mode, and I didn't have wheels yet. Mm-hmm. So I built a big tube rocket and put the wings on it and, the little pod. And I laid it on its side covered in those separator engines to launch it straight up in the air. And then I was going to take off with the thing. It went awful. It did not work.
You know what, though? In theory, that actually sounds like a good idea.
Yeah, it would like lift up in the air, and then the booster would take over. And
yeah.
I think I put too many on one side, and so it basically just flipped a whole bunch and then exploded.
You were describing it, and I was thinking to myself, that sounds like a great idea.
And that's why we don't give advice on space planes.
Well, it depends on what you're trying to do.
Yeah,
if you were trying to do that, then Nos is your man.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for disaster,
he's the master of disaster. Well, let's do a short pause, and then we'll come back and we'll do our mission briefing. We're back with Kerbalcast, and we move on now to Mission Briefing, which is a look at this week's news stories. We start with this article from Space.com. Buzz Aldrin, name sounds familiar.
Yeah.
Second man to set foot on the moon, wants to hear your stories about the first manned moon landing in honor of the historic event's 45th anniversary, which is this month. Beginning today, Aldrin is asking people around the world to share their memories of the Apollo 11 moon landing via social media by uploading recollections of the landing to Facebook, Google+, YouTube, Instagram, and Twitter using the hashtag at Apollo 45. The Apollo 45 YouTube page will be used to promote videos uploaded by people around the world remembering Apollo 11, which touched down on the moon on July 20th, 1969. Did I say that right? I said
hashtag.
Oh, it's hashtag.
Hashtag Apollo 45.
I'm sorry, I said at. It's hashtag
Apollo 45.
Oh, okay, so that's the
yeah.
What do you call it? The
little pound sign.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, for this it's called a hashtag.
Okay.
Yeah, if you're on the phone, it'd be a pound sign.
Okay. Pound sign Apollo 45. And not to be confused with pound sign Colt 45.
We're like, oh, yeah, this is my memory of that. And he's like, oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Well, my memory is being there.
Yeah.
I could just imagine, like, if he wasn't a nice guy. Like, every time you ever seen him, he's a nice guy. But, like, every time he'd be like, yeah, I remember, I heard about it on the radio or watched it on TV or something. He's like, oh, yeah? Well, I've been there. And you're like, oh. Well.
Boy. You got buzzed.
Like, he just shuts you down every time. You're like, oh, it was a very special memory.
Yeah,
was it as good a memory as being there?
Actually being there? Buzz. You got buzzed.
Next piece of news, there's a forum thread dedicated to players who take the game a little too seriously. This is for Kerbalers who have developed custom interfaces and controllers for KSP. If you're working on a project or have completed one, send a link to username Molbin and it'll be added to the main post.
Have you seen some of those pictures?
Those things are crazy.
I know.
Those things are awesome.
They're like complete control panels.
Yeah, like they build their own switchers and everything.
Yeah.
And so like they have
they've got they got like the some of them have like the dymo tape. The labels.
Yeah, and they have like a little switch. Like you have a switch to flip for your RCS to come on and your SAS and I think actually having something like that would be really useful for me because I just forget what key on the keyboard I'm going to hit. So if there's like a giant, like if I had one out of a giant button the size of a basketball for F5 and I just punch it like each time, like I'm saving.
You know what though? The person who builds like an actual cockpit.
Yeah.
Now that person wins. I don't care what the contest was.
Yeah.
That person wins.
Just take my money.
Yeah, just take. Yeah, there's like somebody who probably like built a pod in their basement.
Yeah, they have a.
It's like, Mom, more Hot Pockets.
They have like, have you ever heard of MechWarrior?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they have like these giant like. If you go to like Gen Con or something, they have this row of giant cockpits, and you go inside and everybody plays a giant MechWarrior game against each other, and you're in a cockpit. So like if it overheats, all the lights shut off and everything, and or if you get damaged, like all these red lights start flashing. You got a full cockpit and all these screens and stuff. It's crazy. And
they should have like a smoke bomb on the floor, so like as your mech warrior's getting beaten up,
I think it shoots like blasts of air and stuff.
Yeah, like smoke comes rising up,
and then if the whole thing shuts down, you're locked in there forever until somebody like welds you out.
They should have actual flames.
Yeah,
so like you get burned and stuff. I say no more. I guess I move on. I got the next story.
It's time to move on.
It's time to move on. Okay.
And it's the mic hit. We got the mic hit.
Yay.
Yeah.
I didn't hit the mic last podcast.
We had to make up for it. That was a pretty good one.
Yeah, that really was. I just walloped it.
The Biff Aldrin mic punch right there.
Every podcast I hit the mic at some point. I guess technically.
Yeah.
7 out of the last 8 podcasts I have hit.
There we go.
Yeah. And Wilson, this is number 9, so 8 out of 9 I have hit the... See, I can do math. I can do complex mathematics. Okay, moving on before I dig that hole a little bit deeper. If you have a good view of the moon this week, and of course this depends on where you are, but look for a tiny dot just above it at about the 1 o'clock position, which in a digital age, do you think anybody, I mean, are there people out there going, what the heck does that mean?
Yeah, like, where's that at?
What's that? It's the time is the same no matter what.
Better clockwise than clock stupid.
There you go. Okay, look for a tiny dot just above it, 1 o'clock position. You may notice that tiny dot has a reddish tint to it. No surprise considering that it's the planet Mars.
Oh.
Right now, Mars and the moon appear very close together in the night sky. Because Mars is closer to Earth right now, the red planet looks much brighter.
From space.com, confirmed Voyager 1 in interstellar space.
I hit the mic again. On purpose. Will you read the story?
From space.com, confirmed Voyager 1 in interstellar space.
In space.
New data collected by NASA's Voyager 1 spacecraft have helped scientists confirm that the far-flung probe is indeed cruising through interstellar space. Voyager 1 made headlines around the world last year when mission scientists announced that the probe had apparently left the heliosphere, the huge bubble of charged particles and magnetic fields surrounding the Sun, in August 2012. Interstellar space begins where the heliosphere ends, but by some measures Voyager 1 remains inside the solar system, which is surrounded by a shell of comets known as the Oort cloud.
Yep, the Oort cloud.
Oort cloud. While it's unclear exactly how far away from Earth the Oort cloud lies, Voyager 1 won't be there for quite a while. NASA scientists have estimated that Voyager 1 will emerge from the Oort cloud in 14,000 to 28,000 years. Then the space probe will be likely discovered by a race of intelligent machines and sent back to Earth as Voyager. Did you add that in?
Yes. Have you seen Star Trek The Motion Picture? Okay.
The craft launched in September 1977, about 2 weeks after its twin, Voyager 2. The probe embarked upon a grand tour of the outer solar system, giving the world some of its first good looks at Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, and the moons of these planets. Like Voyager 1, Voyager 2 is still active and operational. It took a different route through the solar system and is now expected to follow its twin into interstellar space a few years from now.
You know, I was hoping that you would not pre-read that story. when I put the whole Voyager thing in there.
I did not see that whenever I skimmed it, and I did the Voyager thing slip by me.
Yeah, so. That's why I was saying, you know, okay, you read this one and you read it last.
Yeah, I was wondering why you were holding off to hand it to me.
Yeah. Well, we are done Finally, right? We're done with mission briefing. And you know what that means? And now, another edition of As the Kerbin Turns.
Honey, I'm home.
Hello, dear. How was your day?
Oh, same as always. A surprise attack wiped out the 12 colonies, so we went looking for Earth. Say, do you hear that music? I think it's in the fracking ship.
Tune in next time for another edition of As the Kerbin Turns. All right.
Hey.
Yeah.
You know,
all right.
You know what he's thinking?
What?
There's got to be some way to get out of here.
Said the Joker to the thief. You know what? Have you noticed As the Kerbin Turns is getting a potty mouth?
Yeah.
Because last week they said damned.
Uh-huh.
This week they said fracking.
Yeah. Well, hey, it's good enough for TV.
Yeah, well, that's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
FCC's not coming down on them.
I do want to add something, by the way. You and I talked several episodes ago about music that we like to listen to.
Uh-huh.
Don't you say it.
I'm not.
Not one word.
I'm not.
Not a word.
You'll say it before I do.
Okay.
All right.
We were talking about music that is good to listen to while you're playing Kerbal.
Uh-huh.
I would like to add the soundtrack, the music from Battlestar Galactica.
Okay.
Bear McCreary. Very good music. That's good music to listen to. By the way,
Yeah.
In a future, but I digress, we're going to talk about the movie Europa Report, which
Yes.
you've been pestering me to watch, and I finally did.
Oh, good.
Bear McCreary did the music for Europa Report.
Oh.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
his score for the TV series, the reimagined Battlestar Galactica, awesome.
Nice.
Awesome. Anyway, that's my plug.
Okay, now we're
Okay.
on to But I Digress.
I digress.
Where we talk about non-Kerbal Space Program topics, and today's topic is
The original Planet of the Apes.
the original Planet of the Apes.
And we're doing that because this is the week that they are releasing Dawn of the Planet of the Apes, which is itself a sequel to Rise of the Planet of the Apes. So we figured it would be kind of a neat little thematic tie.
Is our old promo for it.
To go back to the one that started it all.
Okay, so
You had never seen the movie.
I had not seen this one.
And I grew up on it. Woo!
Not counting whenever we did Prometheus, like our digress segments have been very similar to our progress reports. It's like you've spent a lot of hours on whatever it is, and I was just like, oh no, I haven't seen that. I haven't put any hours in that. So I watched Planet of the Apes, and I got to say that was a really fun watch. Like that was just like I just sat down and started watching, and it was just fun.
That's one of those movies. And by the way, I'm going to say this right up front. We're going to do this spoiler free, which I think we can. We're not going to blow anything.
Sure.
Okay.
Okay. Well, I see. Whenever he first told me about the movie, he's like, "All right, I don't want to spoil the ending for you." And I had actually seen the ending.
Yeah, and you were like, "I already know the ending."
Well,
like,
the ending has been spoofed in a lot of different popular media. So,
which really makes me mad. If you are one of the fortunate few that can go see this movie and you don't know the ending, boy, I envy you.
Yeah. If you want to avoid the spoiler,
So we're because I mean there's a lot of thematic material that we can touch on, and that's part of what I love about this movie is that you can approach this movie strictly as an action adventure story.
Yeah.
Hey, it's a guy on a planet with talking apes.
Mm-hmm.
You can approach this as a political satire.
Yeah.
You can approach this as commentary on religion. You can approach this on a society commentary, a cultural commentary. There are so many ways you can parse this movie. It works on so many levels. I think that's part of why when I saw this movie when I was a kid.
Yeah.
Okay, so this goes back to our age difference.
You were around 7?
Well, it came out in 1968. I saw it in bits and pieces throughout the years because it was always on TV.
Okay. I didn't know what the turnover was from something to being on screen.
There were certain movies, like for example, when I was in high school, there was a week every year that I lost sleep because one of the local TV stations, and we had 13.
Ooh, hey.
Yeah, woohoo, and no VCRs or DVRs. or any way to record it. When it was on, you watched it.
Yeah.
But there was this one TV station, and for 1 week every year, they did Ape Week. And it started at about 11:30 at night.
Hey, just so you know, that was before Shark Week.
Yeah, it was before Shark Week. Yeah, exactly. But, you know, it was like Planet of the Apes, and then the next night Beneath the Planet of the Apes, and then Escape, and, you know, Conquest, and then Battle.
Oh.
And so
I didn't know there were that
every
many.
night for a week, I would, like, not go to bed until, like, 1 o'clock, and then the next day in school, I'd be like, what?
It's a madhouse.
It's a madhouse. I was like, that's not the answer to the question we were asking. No, sorry. Damn dirty ape. But anyway, yeah, no, I when I was a kid, I loved the movie.
Yeah.
Okay, loved it.
Uh-huh.
And, you know, and they would have matinee showings on the weekend, and sometimes we'd go see it there. And as a kid, I just, you know, man, Planet of the Apes is great. Well, when I got older, I had not seen it for several years, and then I came back to it, and all of a sudden it's like, this is not the same movie I remember. There's all this other stuff.
Yeah, you were watching it for the action as a kid.
Yeah, I
and
was watching it because, you know,
like,
talking apes.
Yeah, talking apes. This is crazy. But now you're like, pay attention to the dialogue.
Yeah, which that's one thing. Modern day audiences watching this movie, one thing that they may be a little surprised at is this is a talking movie.
Yeah.
There are some action pieces. There are some set pieces in there. Mm-hmm. But for the most part, it's a lot of people sitting around talking.
Yeah. That did kind of throw me because I was just expecting like a bunch of, you know, running around here and there.
Well, Rise of the Planet of the Apes. You know, it has stretches of talking, but there's also long sequences in there of just full-blown, all-out action.
I think with Planet of the Apes, you know, with the original, there are times whenever you see, like even in the action, like whenever they're in the chase scene, you're kind of like, you have to kind of observe everything while he's running around.
Yeah.
Because it's not just like, oh, he's running and the running is exciting. You see like the museum that he runs into. And so you start learning more things about where he is as he's running around.
And you see how the citizens of that city react to him, which tells you a little something about their world. That's the thing that amazes me about this movie is it works on so many levels. And one thing that has not changed from when I was a kid to now, when I was a kid, I always had this feeling that if he could just say the right thing, or if he could just explain it the right way, everybody would go, oh, okay, oh, you're an astronaut, and okay, now we're friends.
Yeah, if he would have put the way he acted aside, you know.
Well, I mean, if he could have just explained it the right way, and there was that frustration as a kid, like, you know, he's not saying the right thing to make them realize that he's a nice guy. He's a nice talking man.
Whenever he was trying to get the writing pad, I was like, why don't you just do the motion with your hand like you're writing?
Like, hey, give that to me.
Instead of like, oh, come here, and then I try to take it with you.
Grab it.
Yeah, I was like, why not just mimic the writing motion?
But you know what, though? I mean, it's a false hope because, for example, at one point they have a trial, kind of a hearing, I guess, not so much a trial, but a hearing, and they're asking him these very loaded questions that there's no way somebody who was not born and raised in that culture would know the answers to. And because he didn't know their culture and their history and everything, they were saying, aha, see, he's not smart and he doesn't have, you know, the divine spark, or he's not sentient, or whatever. And it was just, you know, it was the deck was so stacked against him that no matter what he said, it just confirmed what they believed. I was reading the trivia on the movie, and it said that the person, they brought some people in to do some script polishing. The person who actually wrote the hearing scene was a writer who had been blacklisted during the Red Purge, the McCarthy Red Purge.
Oh yeah,
and so he was very so he was very familiar with that kind of loaded questioning where there was no way to answer.
Yeah, like no right way out.
Yeah, there was just no, are you still beating your wife? Those kind of questions. But yeah, it's the other thing that I really like about the movie is that and understand now, I don't agree with a lot of the actions that, like, for example, Dr. Zayas, who is played as the heavy throughout the movie. Even in hindsight, even at the end of the movie when the credits are rolling, even though I have now gained an understanding as to why he's doing what he's doing, I still don't agree with it. But what I think is a very good part of the movie, what I think really elevates this movie above others, is that I do understand why he's doing what he's doing.
Yeah.
What his motivations make sense. I just don't agree with them.
Yeah, without condemning or condoning, you understand.
Right. By the same token, you look at what he knows and you look at what he believes and you go, okay, everything he's done makes perfect sense.
I can see how he came to that. Yeah.
Yeah. But the beginning of the movie really is important because it does a couple of things. First of all, it establishes that this is somebody who is very cynical about the human race.
Yeah.
He's thrown himself out into space in search of something better. They crash land on this alien planet. And what I think is very critical, and this goes back to, how Joseph Campbell always talked about with the hero's journey, there was that crossing of the threshold. As they go from the wreck site and they walk to the area that the ape city is and all of that stuff, did you notice how it is a slow process of taking everything away from them? They lose their clothes, they lose their equipment, they lose... It's like every bit of their, quote, humanity is stripped away. And I see that very much as a crossing of the threshold.
Yeah. Yeah, it's like eventually, for some of them, it even strips identity, and it down to where they're no different from all the other, like, indigenous humans that are there.
That are running around.
Yeah, he always had that personality that kind of pushed people away, and he was just, cynical about human nature and everything. And then whenever he gets in a completely, like, topsy-turvy, society, that's the thing he's trying to hold on to, is that, like, he keeps saying that it was better. The way you can just tell that the way he sees that humans had it was better.
Yeah.
Well, he got the thing he wanted, but it wasn't the thing he wanted.
Yeah.
And they kind of...
You may not like what you find.
Yeah, they kind of bring to the forefront that, the only reason that humans ever saw themselves as more important than apes is because they decided they were more important than apes. And so now you're in a society where the apes are more important than the humans because they decided they're more important than the humans.
Right.
And so, now that he's not top of the food chain,
right,
he's got a problem
Literally.
with it, So he was tired of humans having control of everything and the way they treated everything. And now whenever he's a victim of that, he wants, he doesn't so much want for that to stop. He just wants to be back in control.
Right.
Like, he wants to go back to where the humans are, because the humans, of course you want to be back in the area where you have an influence and power.
Well, I will say this. You even expressed surprise that there were so many Planet of the Apes movies originally. There was the original, and then there were 4 more.
Yeah, I've only seen the original.
Okay. That's all you have to see. The other ones are enjoyable in their own right.
Yeah, they just don't carry a whole lot.
Although my rule of thumb, and I know there's somebody out there who has a different opinion, but to me, the ones that start with the letter B are the worst ones, Beneath and Battle.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Escape from the Planet of the Apes is good as long as you overlook a huge leap in logic. Okay.
Right.
Which I'm not going to say.
Okay.
Trust me, it's right at the beginning.
Oh, well,
okay.
That's a good way to start it off.
Yeah. I mean, the entire premise of Escape from Planet of the Apes is predicated on something that is so ridiculous. But that's all I'm going to say.
All right.
The rest of the movie is good. it's just the beginning. You just go, oh man, somebody actually sat down and wrote that on a piece of paper.
Yeah, and they're like, all right, good enough.
Yep. Okay, so Escape is good. Conquest is very good. Again, it flows. It picks up at the end of Escape.
Uh-huh.
And then Battle is definitely way down the food chain.
Yeah, take it or leave it.
Yeah. But all I'm going to say is this, is of all of the Planet of the Apes movies, watch the original. That's all you have to. If you want to watch the rest, great. Just understand that not a single one of them is even remotely on par with the original.
And that is an end to But I Digress.
And an end to this, episode number 9.
Episode number 9 of Kerbalcast.
That's hard to believe.
We want to give a thank you to our listeners.
Also, Dahoud Left-Handed, who joined in and helped us with some tips on building space planes by request. Thank you so much. And be sure and check out his Twitch TV channel.
We also want to give a thank you to our regular contributors.
And the moderators on the subreddits, Kerbal Space Program, and also Kerbal Academy.
And all the music that you've heard is by Professor Soap. You can find him at facebook.com/Professor Soap.
Remember, you can always contact us. It's kerbalpodcast@gmail.com. Again, if you do write us, please indicate what name that you would like for us to use when we read your letter.
And you can also find us on Twitter at Kerbalcast.
And that does it for episode 9 of Kerbalcast. Until next time, I'm your LMP, that's Lunar Module Pilot Biff Aldrin, our CMP, Command Module Pilot,
Nostromo.
Happy Kerbaling! We're back with Kerbalcast, and this time...
Where do we go?
Where do we go? Where do we go from here? Buzz Aldrin, the second man to set foot on the moon, wants to hear your stories about the first manned...
You demand.
You demand. We're back with... and another edition of...
That's
another episode, isn't it?
Yeah. So at the end of the email, just put like Happy Kerbaling and then whatever name you want to be known as.
Yeah, like, Happy Bunny.
It's going to be like the new Spartacus.
I am Spartacus.
I'm Happy Bunny.
I am Spartacus. And you killed a Kerbal.
And I killed a Kerbal.
And don't feel bad about it.
We're not talking about that.
You're smiling.
We're trying to get past that. I will not confirm or deny what happened to that Kerbal.
He has ceased to exist. He's an ex-Kerbal. Even you girls. Ruh-roh. Boop, boop. That sounded funnier in my mind.